Hey folks, my name is Alex Bertelli and I'm the CEO of Haven. And today, on the very first episode of the Hot Wash, we have CW5 retired Doug Englund. Doug and I served in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment at Fort Campbell, and I'm really proud to have Doug on the show as our first guest for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Doug was the very first standardization pilot I met down in the line company at the unit. And Doug and I served from 2008 until 2014. And he's got some really amazing stories to share, one of which is his experience as the lead planner on the UBL raid to capture Osama bin Laden. So we're going to start off with Doug giving a little bit about his background, and then we're going to talk about why the Hot Wash exists and go over some things you can use in your life to get you to the next level. Doug, take it away.
Alex, I appreciate it. So I've actually had a pretty simple life up until the Army. My dad was Air Force. I was born between his two tours in Vietnam. My granddad was on board of the USS Smith, a destroyer in the Guadalcanal, and he has some amazing stories. So selfless service and service to this nation has always been something that I grew up with. So I joined the Army right after high school. My brother was the one who got the 4.0 grades. I was not the 4.0 student. So it took me 5 years after I joined the military as a helicopter mechanic, working on Hueys. I got my degree and then ended up going to flight school. So that was a great success for me because it was almost a second start. The Army allowed me to start over again. So it taught me that second chances, and that sometimes you have late bloomers. And it taught me also that you don't have to get it right based on where you're at for maturity. I guess there's different maturity spikes in everybody's lifestyle and their careers. That's something that I really learned from. And to me, I would, if I had to do it over again, I would do it exactly the same. So I learned a lot how to follow. Flight school, flying Chinooks, Korea. There was a Desert Storm when I was enlisted as a door gunner in northern Iraq and in Turkey. After a year long in Korea, ended up going to Germany, and immediately in Germany went to Bosnia for 11 months. So I've effectively hit every conflict you could think of between 1986 until today, except for Mogadishu. So I've had very unique opportunities to hit all those conflicts. Joined the 160th. To be more accurate, I assessed and then selected, since it is you have to assess and volunteer for as you well know, in 1998, and have been with that organization all the way until I retired about 3 months ago. My career in the 160th, 2,500 missions flown in Iraq, Afghanistan, so combat missions. Some of them were as simple as resupply, but there are about a dozen of us that are in the 160th that have flown 2,500 plus missions. And that's not, that's there. Maybe you do 6 missions in a night, but that was 2,500 total. About just over 7,000 hours of flight time, and then nearly 7 years of deployments. And so I had some very unique experiences.
What's the most important thing that you did that prepared you to go and lead a raid?
There are 2 specific, levels of training that I can remember that really attributed to me safely coming home, night after night. And in particular on the Bin Laden raid was the Weapons Tactic Instructor course. It's called WTI. It's the Top Gun course of the Marine Corps. It's at Yuma, Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, down in Yuma, Arizona. And it's a 3-month course. It's, I'm being in the Army as an Army aviator, they allow guests to come in. So we brought one of our MH-47s down there, Special Operations Chinook, and we're there for 3 months, and it's 6 days a week. You get 1 day off to study, and they teach you the tactics, the basics. They teach you how to be a tactics instructor at all levels. The biggest thing is they teach you how to fly as a helicopter against an adversary in a jet. So air-to-air combat with a jet and helicopter to helicopter. Those are the techniques that brought myself and the crew home on the evening of May 1st, 2011. So if it really wasn't for that training and education experience. The other one was SERE training. SERE training is something that I have referred to. I went to SERE in 1999. And SERE prepares you across all levels. I've educated my children on how to survive. Every time we go camping in our RV, teach them things that I learned on how to bake a chicken with a tin can and a pile of leaves. how to dress a rabbit, all the things that you can think of that you learn from a survival standpoint. And I guess really I thought I knew my limits, but going through, survival, escape, resistance, and evasion, SEER teaches you your limits, your personal limits. So I knew who Doug England was. I knew at that point in a training environment, it did not feel like training. And I'm curious to hear your stories about SEER as well, but you learn your limits on a personal, on a mental, on a physical standpoint. You really know your limits, and you really learn to really enjoy and put. And I really don't, not embarrassed to say it, but to love your fellow soldier and man that's next to you, or woman that's with you, and brother in arms. It really teaches you that there is camaraderie and loyalty for your fellow soldier, airmen, and Marines.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. My most memorable course I ever did was SEER-C at Fort Bragg. It totally teaches you what your limits are. I think that they, without getting into the details, they know when you're at your breaking point, and they stretch you past it, and they continue to do that multiple times throughout the course. So for our viewers, if you don't know what it is, look it up. We won't go into a lot of the details today, but that course was the best course that I think I ever did in the military.
Absolutely.
The things that we've done to prepare from our past experiences through training has allowed us to go out and accomplish these seemingly impossible missions that couldn't have been done in the late 70s or 80s. So that's really cool to know that we kind of agree on that common thing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Hot Wash. Before we get back to the interview, I wanted to mention two great charities that we're supporting. One is the Night Stalker Foundation, which supports 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment soldiers, families, and contractors who are serving here and abroad. The next organization is Tomahawk Charitable Solutions. This organization was founded by naval special operators and supports a wide variety of local causes here in Nashville and ones nationwide. You can check them out at tomahawkcharitablesolutions.org. Now back to the interview. All right, so Doug, let's talk about the hardest decision you ever had to make under pressure and what allowed you to do that from a training or preparedness standpoint.
There was a mission that we conducted in just mission related. There's some family decisions too that definitely learn from. Even coming down to see you today, there's something to learn from. And I try to find a lesson learned and try to react to it and try to compensate for things that I could have done better, or actually recognize and feel good about yourself and feel like you've done it well. The one thing that really stands out in my mind is when we had a gentleman named Sergeant Glenn Earl that was struck in the head with probably an AK or an RPK, but definitely it was an Iraqi enemy gunfire. The events leading up to that really solidified that I need to be confident in my decisions and my ability to lead, because I was the junior flight lead. We had two other Chinook flight leads that were there. And since I was the brand new, this is 2003, and so I'm the junior flight lead, consistently being challenged and validated with those senior flight leads. And the flight lead is, the pinnacle of the airmanship, the aviators in the 160th. So me as a brand new flight lead, I'm now part of that elite population, but still was the junior guy. So felt like I couldn't speak up because I still was in that junior mode. So during the planning phase, we knew that we were refueling on the ground. The Chinooks were providing gas and receiving gas, and we were hitting a city up by Haditha Dam. It wasn't the Haditha Dam experience, which I was on that as well, and so which is an amazing story in itself. But this was hitting a village because it had some strategic value to it. I won't go into the reasons why we were hitting, but it had very strategic value to prove or deny that there were WMDs within Iraq, because this is in 2003. The issue was the ability to get in and out undetected and really without any gunfire. The problem was, because of my lack of involvement and forethought, we blew up the power station to shut the power down for the village. The problem is we were silhouetted. It was a huge ball of fire, and the enemy could see us plain as day. knowing now, if I would have known then what I know now, I would have turned around and gone it from a different direction. So that way we wouldn't sell it ourselves. Ended up, we took an immense amount of fire, and Wright door gun for our second aircraft took a bullet in the head. We thought he was killed in action, but we ended up resuscitating him, and now he has a partial disability, but he's alive today. But I see that as the number one failure, and the reason why is when you lack the confidence because of a stressful situation, sometimes stop and breathe and then figure out what your limitations are. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Back then, I didn't think I could say it because it felt like I was going to get fired. But sometimes if you could speak out and say, I'm overwhelmed, go to the leaders and say, I need some assistance, or I'm at the limit of my ability at this point because of my experience. I think that would speak volumes versus getting into a situation that we now have one of our crew members that got hit. So I try to express that to people that are rising to speak up, announce your limits. And that's what I learned from that one as a failure.
I think that's one of the hardest things in the special operations community is having the guts to say, I'm at my limit or I need some help. And
absolutely.
But it typically is the root cause of some decisions that are made under stress that could have gone correctly or could have gone poorly. And so that's good feedback. For our audience, to make flight lead in the unit takes at a minimum 2 years of flight school. It takes 4 years to go through a regular Army unit. Then you have to assess and be selected to go to the unit. And then typically it's about another 7 or so years, right?
That's correct.
So to get to be at the operator level, we think operator as the guy on the ground shooting, going through the door of a compound, typically a special mission unit guy that you'd think is geared up going through the door. Our special operations aviators go through just as much of a strenuous process and are truly technically and tactically proficient in manipulating that machine. And then it just goes further. It's about leadership. It's about making decisions under duress, and that comes with experience, and all of that comes by properly training. What are some of the events outside of SEER School that you use to help you prepare to go on these presidentially approved missions that seemingly are impossible, but guys like you make look easy?
I think it takes a good foundation. Even before any planning started, receipt of any type of mission or scenario, I had and still have a very wonderful wife and kids that were part of the plan. My wife's number one priority was when I was to go to work or go to war, that those worries on the home front were taken care of. I call it's workplace friction. So or interference. If I would have had that interference, you really can't be that performer where you need to be. So that just speaks volumes of what type of character my wife is. But she knows that you can only focus and be 100% on certain things. You can't be 101% out there of everything. You've got to commit to a profession and get into it. And there are times when it's life and death situation. You have to commit every thought into it. So I'll just, the 34 deployments that I went through with Iraq and Afghanistan, every single one of those, I can count maybe one or two fingers that I was absolutely confronted with a family issue because my wife carried for it. And then, of course, when I came home, it was unloaded and then it was from there. But so I couldn't have done it without her. The second one is to prepare for any special operations mission. The big ones like the Bin Laden raid and other ones when we were actually looking at initial actions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and there are other terrorists in the world that we have planned and may not have ever executed because the intelligence wasn't there. But where do you start? Where do you start in an IPO? Where do you start when you're actually beginning to analyze what situation you're getting into? It's how do you frame your research? How do we frame our research is the talent that you're amongst. So instead of me trying to figure out exactly what the battlefield geometry is, I would make sure that we were together with the right talented individuals to start asking the right questions and figure out what the problem is that we're solving, to figure out what the mission is, and then start looking at primary plans and then second and third order effects and contingency plans. The art and the success of every special operations mission, whether it be on the ground or in the air, is contingency planning. What's going to happen, good, bad, and we always know that the enemy has a vote in everything, so you have to be prepared for everything. The number one thing that we rehearsed in the Bin Laden raid during the planning phase, more so than even the primary plan, was a down aircraft. The number one contingency we rehearsed was a down aircraft. And so,
that's incredible. So for folks who are putting together a plan where they've got to go do something incredible, family or personally or professionally related, it's great to have a base plan, but thinking through the contingencies, like you said, is what makes special operations aviators and ground assaulters the best at what they do. All right, I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
I really want to focus in on habits. So creating habits and a routine leads to success when you get under a high stress situation and you're going back to kind of muscle memory. So what are some habits that you still carry with you today that help you make fast decisions on the fly or negotiate hard obstacles either mentally or physically?
I think from a profession, the thing that I do is always take that tactical pause. And one thing that I do today is just take a pause and figure out, because as you well know, I mean, you as a commander, you know that first information is never the most accurate.
Yeah.
And nothing is time critical, because we have seen what is time critical, and you have to make a hasty decision, and it needs to be right. That's one thing I've learned, especially after retiring. Nothing is that time critical to where you have to react. So take your time and assess it and then get into it. Even bringing up children, all my kids are grown now. Take your time and figure out what's going on, because nothing is that time critical.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, Doug, this has been incredible to sit down with you. Thanks for your leadership and your service to this country. For our viewers out there, if you remember one thing from this event, this interview, is that it takes a team to go out and accomplish something truly difficult, truly special. And Doug is one of our nation's premier special operators and is responsible for some of our most dangerous, highly selected missions that our country's accomplished over the years. So I'd like to propose a toast for those that are overseas right now, for those that we've lost. Legends never die. Nice suckers don't quit.
Nice suckers don't quit.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Hot Wash. Be sure to like and share this video with your friends and family on YouTube and on Facebook. You can check us for new videos dropping every Sunday night at 9 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel, as well as havenready.com. Stay safe out there. Haven Ready for life.
Haven Ready for life.